This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
Okay, well, this is a very short lecture, an introduction to process costing. Now, we've looked in earlier chapters at unit costing, absorption and marginal, where we're calculating the cost of one unit. If we make computers, how much does one computer cost? The materials, the labour, etc. Now, process costing is an alternative which is particularly useful when we're making lots and lots of identical units. And as you'll see, the basic idea is very obvious indeed. And let me illustrate with an example. I hope you've got the notes in front of you, the lecture notes, because if you look at example 1, it says during February, the following costs were incurred in a process. We've got a process making things, and in total, we spent materials, 20,000, labour, overheads, and we produced 2,000 units. Well, we want to know the cost of making each unit, of one unit. And so all we do is, first of all, get the total costs in the process. So materials were what, 20,000? Labour, 10,000. And overheads, 8,000. So in total, how much have we spent? 20, 30, 38,000. And how many units did we produce? 2,000. And our job, what's the cost to produce one unit? Well, if it's 38,000 to produce 2,000 units, surely the cost per unit, 38,000 in total, 2,000 units is what? $19. So I think that's very logical, very obvious, and very straightforward. Let me make sure my pen's back. No problem. I'll show you at the end of this. I'll explain why there can be one or two problems, but for the moment, I think easy enough. Now you'll see over the page, it talks about process T accounts. Now, if you've already done paper FA, the financial accounts, you know what we mean by T accounts and debits and credits. But I appreciate if you've not done paper FA, then it may mean nothing to you. But don't worry, in paper MA you can't be asked to actually write up what we call a T account. And it's only really, anything's only really relevant here in process costing. But you just could be asked one or two of the entries to make sure you're clear what we would do. And so to be safe, let me write up a T account. But as I say, all you really need is the little I'm going to go through here. But it's just a question of how we record everything. So for the same example that we've just done, it says prepare a process account. Well, standardly, on each side we have two columns. One to record the dollars, and another to keep track of the units. And all we do is, first of all, we list the various costs involved. If you've done financial accounts, you'll know that if we pay for materials, we credit cash. Well, we'll debit the process costing, the left-hand side. So materials, how much did we spend? 20,000. Labour, 10,000. Overheads, 8,000. So there we are, that's how much we spent in total. Well, we want to keep track of the units. Well, always we attach the units to materials. We say as soon as we buy materials, we're starting work on the units. So how many? 2,000. And then we say, well, what happened to those units? It's a nice simple example here, so any complications we'll come to in the next chapter. But those 2,000 units leave the process and they become what we call finished goods. Finished goods. And how much did they cost? Well, we've done our costing, however simple. We worked out that they were costing us 19 a unit. And so at 19 a unit, 2,000 units, a total 38,000. And we check both sides add up, so 2,000 units were worked on and 2,000 units came out. We spent in total 38,000. And there we are. There's the value that left the process. Now that all may seem a little bit too simple, and it is. There's no difficulty there. However, as I did mention earlier, and on the last page of this chapter, there are potential problem areas. One is losses. It could be that what we were making here was perhaps a beer. And perhaps when we make beer, we need to boil the liquid. And so although we might have put in 2,000 litres of liquid, some of that's going to disappear in steam. And so fewer come out. Well, we need to be able to deal with it. If we know we're not going to get 2,000 units out, it's a bit silly to cost it out over 2,000 units. So I'll show you the implications and how we deal with it in the next chapter. There used to be a second, much more complicated problem dealing with what we call work in progress. Now, I mentioned it here simply because if you'd already started studying under the old syllabus, the syllabus changed recently, if you'd started studying under the old syllabus, where work in progress was examined, it's important you realise that now it's no longer examinable. Equally, if you're using old study books, which you shouldn't really, it's important to be up to date, but if you are using old books, you will find reference to work in progress. Well, it's no longer examinable. So I won't waste your time now explaining what it is. Finally, joint products is another little complication. It's where perhaps we've one process where two separate products come out. Now, if you don't know what I mean, it'd be silly for me to explain it all now. In the later chapter, I will give you an example of what we mean, how we can have two products or more in one process, and again, how we deal with it. So, that was just an introduction. In the next chapter, we will go into dealing with losses and have a bit more fun. Good.